Welcome to our countdown of the top 10 haunted prisons that will send shivers down your spine. These are the places where evil lived, where the worst of humanity were locked away. But the stories didn't end when the lights went out, when the guards clocked out, when the cell doors slammed shut for the final time. From notorious criminals to restless spirits, these prisons are not for the faint of heart. The walls of these prisons have absorbed decades of suffering, of madness, and something remains. These are their stories. Our journey begins in Philadelphia, home to Eastern State Penitentiary. This place was designed to be a true hell on earth. From 1829 to 1971, Eastern State housed some of the most notorious criminals, but the real terror began after the last inmate left. Historian Eastern State was designed with a revolutionary separate system of imprisonment, total isolation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, locked in solitary confinement. In the minds of the wardens, it was supposed to inspire penitence, but it drove men mad. Paranormal investigator. People have reported seeing shadowy figures lurking in the cell blocks. They hear whispers, disembodied voices, and blood-curdling screams in the dead of night. They feel cold spots, like a hand has just brushed their skin. Some even say they've been touched by unseen hands, icy fingers digging into their arms. One of the most haunted areas is cell block 12. A voice, raspy and full of rage, growls, "Get out! It's enough to make your blood run cold, trust me, historian." So why is Eastern State so haunted? Some say it's because of the brutal treatment of the inmates. Whatever the reason, Eastern State Penitentiary remains one of the most terrifying places on earth. Next, we travel to the infamous Rock, shrouded in mist and mystery Alcatraz Island. Surrounded by the icy waters of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz was the ultimate symbol of isolation and despair. For almost 30 years, it housed some of America's most hardened criminals like Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly. Visitors and park rangers have reported hearing ghostly whispers and phantom screams. One of the most haunted areas in Alcatraz is Cell 14D, also known as the Hole. The story goes that one inmate, driven mad by isolation, saw a creature with glowing eyes. He screamed for hours, and when the guards opened the door, they found him dead. Alcatraz, a place of punishment and fear where the ghosts of the past still roam the cell blocks. Our next stop takes us to Mansfield, Ohio, to the imposing Ohio State Reformatory. You might recognize it from the silver screen. It was the setting for the iconic film The Shawshank Redemption. Historian for over 90 years, it held within its walls the stories of thousands of inmates, many of whom never truly left. Paranormal investigator. One of the most haunted areas is the solitary confinement block known as the Hole. The air is thick with a palpable sense of dread and despair, like the walls themselves are weeping with the pain of those who suffered within. But there's another area, even more sinister, that sends chills down my spine, the old execution room. People say that the energy in that room is so heavy, so oppressive, it feels like you're suffocating. Ohio State Reformatory, a place where fact and fiction blur, where the stories of the dead and the living intertwine in a tapestry of despair and terror. Hold on tight as we venture deep into the heart of Appalachia, to Moundsville, West Virginia. Here stands the West Virginia Penitentiary, a gothic monstrosity that looms over the town like a specter of death.
Visitors and investigators have reported countless chilling encounters. Shadowy figures darting in and out of cells, disembodied screams echoing through the corridors.
One of the most haunted areas is the North Hall, also known as Death Row.
West Virginia Penitentiary, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. Our next stop takes us south to the heart of Charleston, South Carolina. Here, amidst the antebellum architecture and cobblestone streets, lies the old Charleston Jail, a haunting reminder of the city's dark and turbulent past. For over 150 years, it served as a holding pen for criminals, Civil War prisoners, and even pirates.
The jail's most infamous resident was Lavinia Fisher, a cunning and ruthless woman who lured unsuspecting travelers to their deaths. Sentenced to hang for her crimes, Lavinia's spirit is said to still haunt the jail, her ghostly cries for mercy echoing through the empty corridors.
But Lavinia is not the only restless spirit trapped within the jail's walls. The spirits of Confederate soldiers captured during the Civil War are said to still roam the cells, their anguished cries for freedom a chilling reminder of the horrors of war.
The old Charleston jail, a place where history and horror collide, where the ghosts of the past still walk among the living, their stories etched into the very fabric of the building. Our journey now takes us to Jefferson City, Missouri, to the Missouri State Penitentiary. Known as the bloodiest 47 acres in America, this prison housed some of the most hardened criminals. Riots, fires, and executions stained its history, leaving behind raw human suffering.
Tales of guards driven mad, of inmates driven to suicide by the oppressive atmosphere. Housing Unit 4, thick with negative energy, feared by even the most hardened criminals.
The dungeon, a labyrinth of isolation cells, is a hotspot of paranormal activity. Visitors report disembodied whispers, clanging cell doors, and unseen touches.
The Missouri State Penitentiary, 47 acres of blood and terror where ghosts still roam free.
Our next stop takes us across the Atlantic to Dublin, Ireland, to a place where the fight for freedom and the horrors of imprisonment are forever intertwined. Kilmainham Jail.
This imposing stone fortress served as a symbol of oppression for centuries, its cold, damp walls bearing witness to the suffering of countless souls.
It wasn't just criminals who were imprisoned here. Political prisoners, rebels and revolutionaries were all held within Kilmainham's walls, their dreams of a free Ireland dashed against the cold, hard reality of their confinement.
The suffering endured within these walls echoes through time, a haunting reminder of the human cost of freedom.
The air is thick with the weight of history, the echoes of suffering clinging to every stone.
One of the most haunted areas is the Stonebreaker's Yard, where prisoners were forced to break rocks for hours on end. Their bodies racked with pain, their spirits slowly breaking under the strain. Kilmainham Jail, a place where the ghosts of Ireland's turbulent past still linger, their stories etched into the very fabric of the building. Our journey takes us now to the southern hemisphere, to a place of bleak beauty and unspeakable sorrow. Port Arthur, Tasmania. This isolated penal colony, perched on the edge of the world, was once home to some of Britain's most hardened criminals.
For over 40 years, Port Arthur served as a dumping ground for the unwanted, a place where men were broken and discarded. The conditions were brutal, the punishments savage.
The air at Port Arthur is thick with the weight of history, the echoes of suffering clinging to the windswept landscape.
The penitentiary, a massive structure that once housed over 600 convicts, is a hotbed of paranormal activity. Visitors have reported seeing shadowy figures peering out from the cell windows, their eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light. Disembodied whispers, the clanging of cell doors, and the feeling of being touched by unseen hands are all common occurrences within the penitentiary's walls.
The separate prison, a place of utter isolation and despair, is another site of intense paranormal activity.
Port Arthur, a place where the ghosts of the past walk hand in hand with the living, their stories etched into the very fabric of the island. We return now to the British Isles, to the rugged coastline of Cornwall, England, where amidst the windswept moors lies Bodmin Jail.
For over 150 years, Bodmin Jail housed some of Britain's most notorious criminals.
One of the most infamous inmates was the Beast of Bodmin, a shadowy figure linked to animal mutilations.
Visitors often feel a palpable sense of unease, as if watched by unseen eyes. The air is thick with history, echoes of suffering clinging to every stone.
The hanging beam, where prisoners met their end, is a site of intense paranormal activity. Visitors report a cold sensation near the beam, as if spirits are still present.
Bodmin Jail, where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, where ghosts of the past still walk among us. Our final destination takes us back to Australia, to the port city of Fremantle, where overlooking the sparkling waters of the Indian Ocean stands Fremantle Prison.
Fremantle Prison housed convicts for over 130 years, its walls bearing witness to the suffering and despair of thousands of souls.
As you walk through the prison's corridors, you can almost feel the weight of history pressing down on you, the echoes of suffering clinging to the cold, damp walls.
The solitary confinement cells known as the solitary are particularly chilling. Convicts were kept in these tiny, lightless cells for weeks, even months on end. Their only contact with the outside world a small hatch in the cell door,
The whipping post, where prisoners were brutally flogged for even the smallest infractions, is another site of intense paranormal activity. The sound of the whip cracking against flesh, the screams of the condemned, and the scent of blood are said to still linger in the air, a chilling reminder of the brutality that unfolded within these walls.
Fremantle Prison, a place where the past and present collide, where the spirits of the condemned still walk among us, their stories etched into the very fabric of the building. Thanks for joining us on this spine-chilling journey through the world's most haunted prisons. We've explored the darkest corners of these infamous institutions where the spirits of the condemned still linger, their stories etched into the very fabric of the buildings. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. We're always on the hunt for the most haunted places on Earth, and we can't wait to share our findings with you. Until next time, stay spooky.